You don't forget the moment your heart breaks loud enough for your soul to hear it. For me, it wasn't when he left. It was when I walked into my sister's engagement dinner and saw my boyfriend, my secret, my forever, my child's father, down on one knee in front of her. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I didn't even cry. I stood there, clapping with everyone else as my world quietly collapsed in my chest. And none of them knew. None of them knew the baby growing inside me belonged to the man she was about to marry. His name was Jordan. And for 6 years I thought he was mine. We met in college when I was still clumsy with hope and too eager to fall. He was charming, magnetic, the kind of guy who looked at you like you were the only person in the room. He said all the right things, held my hand like a secret, and made me feel like I wasn't invisible anymore. But Jordan didn't like attention. Not the public kind. When I told him I wanted to tell my family about us, he hesitated. "They're too involved in your life," he said. "I just want us to be ours for a while." And I agreed. Because when you're in love, hiding feels like protection. I kept him secret through college, through job changes, through holidays and heartbreaks. I made excuses. Lied to my sister when she asked why I was smiling so much. Told my mom I was working late when I was wrapped in his arms on the couch. I built a world around him. And he built a world without me. The night I found out I was pregnant, I cried happy tears. It wasn't planned, but it felt like fate. Like maybe the universe was tired of keeping us hidden. Like maybe it was time we stopped pretending we weren't forever. I called him immediately. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice shaky. "I've taken 3 tests," I whispered. "Jordan, we're going to be parents." There was a long pause. Too long. Then he said, "Let's talk tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. He didn't show up. Didn't call. Didn't text. I waited. I panicked. I spiraled. And then my mom called me that night with a smile in her voice. "Lila's engaged," she beamed. "You'll never guess who." I didn't guess. I didn't have to. When she said his name, I dropped the phone. Everything froze. My lungs stopped working. My heart, my stupid, trusting, loyal heart, finally gave out. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, my hand resting on my stomach, wondering how I could still feel so full of life while everything around me felt so dead. The next few days were a blur. No one knew what I was carrying. Not just the baby, but the betrayal, the shame, the silent scream that lived inside me. I knew Lila didn't know. I never told her about Jordan. I never told anyone. I kept him hidden for so long, even from the people who loved me. Because deep down I believed I didn't deserve the kind of love you shout from rooftops. And now, she had it. The engagement party was held at a fancy rooftop restaurant. The kind of place with crystal chandeliers and expensive wine and family members pretending to like each other. I showed up late. I wore a red dress, not because I wanted to be seen, but because I wanted him to know I wasn't afraid anymore. The second I walked in, I saw him. Standing next to Lila. Holding her waist like it had always been hers. Smiling like he hadn't shattered me days before. His eyes met mine and I saw it. That flicker of fear. The panic behind the smile. He didn't expect me to show up. He didn't expect me to look like I hadn't just spent 2 days crumbling in my apartment. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I raised a glass like everyone else and toasted to their happiness. And when he kissed her hand and thanked the crowd, I felt something click inside me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was clarity. He thought he'd erased me. He thought he could rewrite the story without the girl he used to love. But what he didn't know was that I had already written my next chapter. And this time, I was the one holding the pen. The next morning, I woke up with a decision in my chest. It pulsed like a second heartbeat. I wasn't going to play the role of the broken girl in the shadows anymore. I wasn't going to let my child grow up thinking they were someone's mistake. I was going to take back the narrative. But first, I had to understand how he got away with it. Why he thought he could sleep beside me one night and slip a ring on my sister's finger the next. I started piecing things together like a crime scene. His late replies. His sudden weekend business trips. The way he'd started turning his phone upside down on the table months before. The hints were there, quiet as whispers, but I didn't listen. Because love has a way of muting all the warning bells. I didn't tell anyone I was pregnant. Not even Lila. Especially not Lila. Because if she had known, she never would have said yes. I believed that with every aching part of me. My sister wasn't cruel. Just oblivious. She had always been the golden one. The one who got the awards, the compliments, the second helpings of love. And I made myself small so she could shine brighter. It wasn't her fault, not completely. We were raised to believe there could only be one star in the room. And she had been handed the spotlight since birth. But now she was planning a wedding with the father of my child, and I had a decision to make. Do I destroy her illusion? Or do I protect her from the same heartbreak that nearly swallowed me? I tried to keep my distance. For a week I ignored her calls. Dodged her messages. When she finally showed up at my apartment with cupcakes and Pinterest boards, I wanted to scream. Instead I smiled and nodded even as I bled inside. We're thinking of Italy for the honeymoon, she gushed. You should come help me pick the dress. Wedding. Vows. Place. Jordan never flinched. Every time I saw them together he played the role like he'd rehearsed it. He'd kiss her hand, open her door, pull her into his chest like he didn't still smell like the soap in my bathroom. But when our eyes met just for a second I saw it. Guilt. He was scared. Scared I'd say something. Scared I'd ruin it all. And for a while I didn't. Not because I was weak. But because I was watching. Waiting. Planning. Then came the day that changed everything. A letter came in the mail. No return address. Just my name in sharp, familiar handwriting. I opened it and pulled out a single photo. Me and Jordan. Asleep in my bed. His arm wrapped around me. My head on his chest. Dated just 3 weeks before the engagement party. I stared at it, my hands trembling. There was no note. No explanation. His proof. Someone knew. And they wanted me to remember. I looked around my apartment like someone might be watching. Then I grabbed the photo, shoved it into a drawer and sat down. I wasn't just going to wait for karma anymore. I was going to deliver it myself. Every day after that photo arrived, I saw the world through a different lens. I watched Jordan more closely. Not the way a woman in love watches, but the way a hunter watches prey. Every smile he gave Lila felt like a mockery. Every time he said, "I love you," I wanted to scream, "Which one of us are you lying to?" But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I smiled when Lila invited me to her bridal shower. I even helped her pick out wedding favors. I stood beside her, watching her plan a fairy tale, with the man who had left his child growing in me. I started journaling, documenting everything. Dates, times, words. I made sure my pregnancy was healthy, that my baby was safe. And I started gathering evidence. You see, betrayal like this, it deserves a response. Not a tantrum. A reckoning. One afternoon I accidentally dropped my scarf in Jordan's car when he drove me home from Lila's. He offered like the gentleman he pretended to be. I pretended to accept. He was tense the whole ride. His hand gripped the wheel like it held all his lies together. But I stayed silent. Later that night I texted him. "We need to talk. You know why?" He didn't respond for hours. When he did, it was brief. "Jordan, not over text. Tomorrow. Your place. 7 p.m. I showed up on time, but I didn't knock right away. I watched from the hallway, staring at his door like it held the answers to every wrong turn my life had taken. When I finally stepped inside, the air shifted. He looked older somehow. More tired. "Jade," he began. I cut him off. "You knew, didn't you? That I was pregnant." He blinked. "What?" "I didn't tell you because I wanted to see if you'd even notice. If you'd care." He went quiet. "I'm not here for apologies," I said. "I'm here to tell you the truth, because you clearly can't handle it." "I never meant for any of this to happen," he mumbled. "Oh, so sleeping with 2 sisters was an accident?" He rubbed his hands over his face. "I loved you. But you were going through so much and I panicked. And ran straight into her arms." He didn't deny it. I pulled the photo from my bag and slid it across the table. "You didn't just hurt me, Jordan. You built your future on my pain. And now there's a child involved." His eyes widened. "Child?" I nodded. "Yours." He stood up, pacing. "I didn't know. You should have told me. You should have stayed. He sat back down, defeated. I'm not asking for anything, I said, calmer now. But you're not going to keep pretending this never happened. I won't let you. He nodded slowly. What are you going to do? I smiled, not the kind he remembered. The kind that meant the game was over. You'll see. And I left. The days that followed were almost too calm. Jordan stopped texting. Stopped calling. Probably praying I wouldn't blow up his perfect little love story. Lila, on the other hand, was glowing. Floating. The dress fitting was next week. I watched her twirl in satin and lace, gushing about how Jordan makes me feel seen. Took everything in me not to scream. But I didn't show my hand. Not yet. I needed her to know the truth, but not from my lips. I needed her to see it. Feel it. So I printed the photo. The one of me and Jordan. The timestamp still visible in the corner. I slipped it into an envelope with a note written in shaky, deliberate letters. Would he still say, I do, if you knew who he said it to first? No name. No return address. Just truth sharpened like a dagger. I mailed it. 3 days before the wedding. Then I waited. The night before the ceremony I got a call. Lila. She was sobbing. Shattered. I thought you were my sister, she cried, voice cracked and raw. How could you do this to me? It hit like a punch. He thought I was the villain. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Lila. I didn't take him from you. He gave himself away. You slept with him while we were together. No, I said, calm now. Before. But you didn't ask. You just believed his version of the truth. She went silent. Then hung up. I stood there staring at my phone, my stomach tight. This wasn't how I wanted her to find out. But part of me knew, some truths only break through when they hurt. The next morning the wedding went on. Sort of. The guests arrived. The music played. But there was no bride walking down the aisle. Lila never showed up. Later that day I got a message from her. I need time. But I believe you now. And I'm sorry. I exhaled. Not because I wanted her forgiveness. But because finally she saw the truth. And Jordan? He didn't text. Didn't call. Didn't chase. Because cowards never do. But I wasn't looking for an apology anymore. I had something far more important. A child growing inside me. A life I was going to build on honesty, not betrayal. And from that moment on I stopped looking back. Pregnancy is supposed to be a time of celebration. A time to be pampered, loved, and protected. But mine felt like walking through a storm barefoot, soaked in the aftermath of betrayal. My body was growing a miracle, but my heart was still bruised from everything Jordan and Lila had done. I remember standing in front of the mirror one evening, 6 months pregnant, my hands cupping the curve of my belly. I looked at my reflection and barely recognized the woman staring back. My eyes were tired. My skin had lost its glow. But for the first time I didn't feel weak. I felt solid, grounded, like I had been reforged in fire. Because somehow through the shame, the heartbreak, and the sleepless nights I had survived. I didn't hear from Jordan after the wedding fiasco. Not a text. Not an apology. Not even a pitiful attempt to explain himself. I found out through a mutual friend that he'd left town 2 days after Lila called off the wedding. Apparently he went to stay with his brother across the country. He never even fought for her. He just vanished. The same way he'd done with me. Lila disappeared too. She didn't block me, but she didn't call either. We went from sisters to strangers overnight, and in a way that hurt more than what Jordan had done. Because no matter how messy life got, I always believed Lila and I had each other. That our bond would survive anything. But betrayal has a funny way of making people choose silence over healing. So I turned all my energy toward the one person who needed me most. My baby. I started taking long walks every morning, one hand on my belly, whispering to her the kind of promises I once believed in. I told her she would always know the truth. That I would never leave. That her life wouldn't begin with lies. I named her Hope long before she was born. Because that's what she gave me. On the days I couldn't get out of bed, when the loneliness crept in like fog, when the weight of everything I'd lost made it hard to breathe, she reminded me to hold on. The day she arrived was anything but glamorous. It was storming outside, typical. My water broke at 2 a.m. I took a cab to the hospital alone. No dramatic scene. No one holding my hand. Just me, clutching my coat, trying to remember how to be brave. Labor was long. Painful. Exhausting. But when they placed her in my arms, all the noise inside me stopped. She was perfect. A tiny, wrinkled bundle with a loud cry and the most beautiful brown eyes I'd ever seen. I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt complete. I left the hospital 2 days later, carrying hope in one arm and my future in the other. The apartment looked the same, but I didn't. I wasn't the heartbroken girl anymore. I was a mother. And I had no time for regret. I started working part-time from home. It wasn't easy, rocking a baby to sleep while juggling client calls and deadlines, but it gave me purpose. A rhythm. A new version of life I never saw coming. And then one ordinary Thursday afternoon, I heard a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart skipped. When I opened it, I froze. Lila stood there. No makeup. Hair tied back. She held a stuffed giraffe in one hand and a trembling breath in the other. I didn't know if I should come, she said softly. But I had to try. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I'm sorry, she whispered, eyes filled with unshed tears. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. And when the truth came out, I didn't know how to face you. So I ran. I swallowed the knot in my throat. Why now? I've been following your journey online, she admitted. I saw the pictures. Read the post. I guess I just needed time to see past my pride. She looked down at the giraffe in her hand, then back at me. Can I meet her? I hesitated. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I was scared. Scared to open that door again, literally and emotionally. But then I looked down at Hope, peacefully napping in her bassinet, and realized this story wasn't just about pain. It was about healing. So I stepped aside and let Lila in. She walked over to the crib slowly, as if approaching a sacred altar. She knelt beside Hope and started crying the moment she saw her. She's beautiful, she whispered. And you're amazing. We sat in silence for a while. Not because we had nothing to say, but because the weight of everything was finally beginning to lift. Forgiveness isn't loud. It's quiet. It's two broken women finding their way back to each other in the softest, most human way. And that day, as the rain tapped against my window, I felt something shift. Not everything had to be perfect. But everything was finally okay. It took time, but Lila and I slowly began to mend the pieces of our relationship. We weren't suddenly best friends again. No, trust doesn't work that way. But there was honesty now. Vulnerability. Late-night calls filled with tears and hard conversations. She came over every week to help with Hope. Sometimes she'd bring takeout and we'd sit on the floor laughing like we were teenagers again, just two sisters trying to make sense of the wreckage. And every time I saw her hold Hope, something in me softened. I didn't need her to be perfect. I just needed her to be real. As for Jordan, life had a way of catching up with him. About 6 months after Hope was born, I got a message from an old coworker. She'd seen Jordan working behind the counter at a mechanic shop out of state. Word had it he'd gone through 2 jobs, burned a few bridges, and was now barely scraping by. Apparently, karma travels. He tried reaching out once. An email that began with, "I miss you both," and ended with a request to see Hope. I didn't reply. Because some people don't deserve access to the life they abandoned. Especially not the child they pretended didn't exist when it no longer suited their version of love. I didn't hate him anymore. But I would never forget what he did. And I wasn't about to let him rewrite the story just because his life had taken a turn. I moved on in my own way. I started a blog about motherhood and healing. At first, it was just me and a handful of strangers reading my midnight rambles about grief, betrayal, and baby milestones. But somehow people connected with it. The blog grew. So did my confidence. Eventually, I started coaching other single moms, women who'd been left, shamed, forgotten. I helped them rebuild the same way I had. We shared stories over coffee, held each other's babies, and reminded each other that broken beginnings don't mean broken endings. And through it all, Hope grew. She started walking at 11 months. Talking not long after. Her first word wasn't mama or duh. It was more. And isn't that the perfect way to describe what she gave me? More courage. More love. More reason to fight. One sunny afternoon I took her to the park, and as she toddled toward the swings in her polka dot dress, I felt something bloom in my chest. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't mourning what could have been. I was living. Fully. Fiercely. And without apology. A woman nearby smiled at me and said, "You look so happy." And I was. Not because my life was easy. Not because I got a fairy tale. But because I made it out of the storm, and built something better with the pieces. They thought I'd break. But I built a better life. And that, to me, is the sweetest revenge of all. If you've ever been broken, betrayed, or underestimated, just know this. Your story isn't over. And you are not alone. Like, comment, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories of strength, survival, and sweet, sweet justice.